Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the final, tumultuous years of the Great War. The years 1917 and 1918 were a period of dramatic shifts, desperation, and ultimately, resolution. The world that emerged from these 2 years would be forever changed. So, let's explore the critical events that brought World War I to its dramatic conclusion. By the start of 1917, Europe was a continent exhausted by nearly 3 years of brutal, grinding warfare. The initial patriotic fervor had long since evaporated, replaced by a grim determination on the battlefields and profound weariness on the home fronts. The Western Front remained a bloody stalemate of trenches, mud, and barbed wire, with battles like Verdun and the Somme in 1916 costing millions of lives for negligible gains. On the Eastern Front, the Russian Empire was teetering on the brink of collapse, its armies poorly supplied and its people starving. The war at sea was equally vicious, with German U-boats attempting to strangle Britain into submission. It was a world holding its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the deadlock. That something began with Germany's high-stakes gamble in early 1917. The resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. The German High Command believed that by sinking any and all ships heading to Britain, they could starve the island nation out of the war within 6 months. They knew this policy risked provoking the neutral United States, but they wagered that Britain would surrender before America could effectively mobilize and transport an army across the Atlantic. This was a fateful miscalculation. Simultaneously, British intelligence intercepted a secret message from German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmermann to Mexico. The Zimmermann telegram proposed a military alliance between Germany and Mexico if the U.S. entered the war. In return for attacking the United States, Mexico would be promised the territories of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The publication of the Zimmermann telegram in American newspapers was a bombshell. It ignited public outrage and shattered the remaining isolationist sentiment. The idea of a German-backed war on American soil was too much to ignore. Combined with the mounting losses of American lives and ships to German U-boats, President Woodrow Wilson had little choice. On April 6, 1917, the United States Congress declared war on Germany. While it would take many months for American troops, the doughboys, to arrive in force. The entry of this new industrial and demographic giant tipped the long-term balance of power decisively in favor of the Allies. The German gamble had failed, and the clock was now ticking against them. While America was gearing up for war, one of the original Allied powers was collapsing from within. In Russia, the war had been a catastrophe. Military defeats, staggering casualties, and severe food shortages led to widespread discontent. In March 1917, riots and strikes in the capital, Petrograd, escalated into a full-blown revolution. The army refused to fire on the protesters, and Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, ending centuries of Romanov rule. A provisional government took over, but it made the critical error of trying to continue the war. This decision proved deeply unpopular with the Russian people, who were desperate for peace. Sensing an opportunity, Germany facilitated the return of a radical revolutionary from exile in Switzerland, Vladimir Lenin. Lenin and his Bolshevik party promised the people peace, land, and bread. In November 1917, they seized power in a second revolution. True to their word, one of their first acts was to seek an armistice with Germany. In March 1918, they signed the Treaty of Versailles. The terms were harsh, ceding vast territories, including Ukraine, Finland, and the Baltic states, to the Central Powers. But for Germany, it was a massive victory. The war on the Eastern Front was over. They could now transfer hundreds of thousands of seasoned troops to the West for one final, decisive blow before the Americans arrived in overwhelming numbers. This set the stage for the German spring offensive of 1918, codenamed Operation Michael. Beginning on March 21st, German General Erich Ludendorff unleashed a series of massive attacks on the Western Front, using new stormtrooper tech, elite units bypassing strong points to create chaos in the rear. The Germans achieved stunning initial success. For the first time in years, the front lines moved. They shattered British lines, advanced nearly 40 miles, and once again brought Paris within range of their long-distance artillery. Panic rippled through the Allied capitals, It seemed as though Germany might actually snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But the German army was a hollow force. Their offensive was born of desperation, and they couldn't sustain the momentum. The stormtroopers outran their supplies, and the follow-on infantry was exhausted and demoralized. Crucially, American troops were now pouring into France at a rate of 10,000 a day. They played a vital role in blunting the German advances at key battles like Cuntini and Below Wood. The German offensive stalled. It had been their last roll of the dice, and it had failed. The human cost was immense, but it had bought the Allies the time they needed. With the German offensive spent, the Allies seized the initiative. Starting in August 1918, they launched a coordinated counterattack known as the 100 Days Offensive, led by French Marshal Ferdinand Foch, and utilizing a combination of infantry, improved artillery techniques, tanks, and aircraft. The Allies began to systematically push the Germans back. The Battle of Amiens on August 8th was a major turning point, a day Ludendorff himself called the Black Day of the German army. Unlike the grinding battles of previous years, the 100 Days was a war of movement. The once impregnable Hindenburg Line was breached, and the German army, its morale shattered and its reserves depleted, began to disintegrate. As their armies retreated on the battlefield, the home fronts of the Central Powers crumbled. In Germany, the British naval blockade had caused severe food and material shortages, leading to starvation and widespread unrest. Germany's allies began to surrender one by one. Bulgaria in September, followed by the Ottoman Empire in October. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of restless ethnicities, dissolved into revolution and collapsed in early November. In Germany, sailors in the port of Kiel mutinied, sparking revolts across the country. Facing civil war at home and undeniable defeat at the front, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated and fled to the Netherlands. A new republic was declared, and its representatives immediately sought an end to the fighting. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1980, the guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. An armistice was signed in a railway carriage in the forest of Campion, France, bringing an end to 4 years of unimaginable slaughter. The Great War was over. It left behind a scar on the world. Over 15 million dead, entire empires destroyed, and a generation traumatized. The events of 1917 and 1918 were the final, frantic acts in this global tragedy. A whirlwind of revolution, gambles, and offensives that sealed the fate of nations and redrew the map of the world. The peace that followed would, unfortunately, prove to be just a pause, setting the stage for an even greater conflict 2 decades later. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the final years of World War I. If you found this video interesting and want to learn more about pivotal moments in history, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what piece of history you'd like to explore next. Until then, stay curious.